I've put 110% into this. Something's happened that I've got no control over. I can either just call it a day, or I can just put my head down, try and minimize the fallout. And I believe in myself, so I'm going to back myself and put all the money that I've put away back into this, and hopefully it'll be enough to sustain me to when this finishes. And every month I was thinking, I can't go on another month, can't go on another, and it just kept going on and on and on. And I think you've just got to believe in yourself. And that's where you've just got to say, like, I believe in my mission, I believe what I'm doing is right.
Welcome to Your Mind, Your Business, the podcast that dives into the real grit of entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Karina McLeod, CEO and fitness fanatic. And today we have a special guest, Daniel Herman from Biosynergy. Welcome, Daniel.
Yeah, Karina, long time. Thank you very much for the invite. Delighted to be here, and I'm going to try and be on my best behaviour for you.
Thank you so much. And it is a long time, right? I think we met, we were trying to figure out how many years ago was when we met during the Amazon days, which is probably over 15 years ago. So I think let's start off, if you share a bit about who you are today with our audience, and then we'll go and hit rewind, and I'm sure we'll figure out those years of where we crossed paths a long time ago. Yeah,
maybe, if memory permitting. So I'm founder and CEO of Biosynergy. My name's Daniel, and basically set up Biosynergy, which is a sports nutrition brand, back in '97. And the goal was to help people achieve their fitness goals, whatever they were.
Fantastic. And so that's a long time, 1997. So I'm just trying to do calculations in my head as to how long that is. So that's nearly 28 years in.
It's just over. We're heading into our 29th year now.
And that's incredible, because especially the product that you have, like a supplement, compared to sort of where we are now.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the industry was completely different 1997. So let's hit rewind and go to 1997 when you first started out. Who was Daniel when you first started out, and how did you...
Probably need to go back a couple of more years. So when I was at school, I was always the fat kid that was bullied, always getting into trouble, often ended up in hospital for getting into scrapes. Spent most of my time at the tuck shop, and if there was games or sports, you'd probably find me hiding somewhere or faking a doctor's note to get out of it. So I was quite overweight as a teenager, very, very naughty. Probably my parents didn't know what to do with me, to be fair. Then I ended up somehow managing to get into university, and then I did something weird. I was a southerner, ended up going up north and living in the first year in halls with a bunch of very, very tough rugby league boys. And I was a soft southerner in every way, both physically, mentally, and so on. And basically I grew up in the Rocky generation, and they kind of not bullied me, but half encouraged me to start doing something about my fitness. And I was really motivated by them. But also looking back at the kind of Rocky generation, the Van Damme films, Ivan Drago, and so on. And I started going to the gym, very spit and sawdust. And it was very different. Actually, it's not that different to gyms now. It was different then, and it's kind of become normal now, in that it was probably 99% male, this gym. Everybody there was on gear. And everybody there, male or female, basically didn't wear a top. It was just hilarious. It was a bit like going to a CrossFit gym now, I guess.
Just thinking that, or high rocks.
Yeah, but probably a slightly sweater and a bit more grungy. And so it's quite intimidating. And my goal was to bench press 50 kilos at the time. So I ended up making up my own protein shakes using raw eggs, Horlicks, peanut butter, whizzing it all up. And I'd have these religiously. And at the time, as a poor student, there used to be a place called Quick Save, which was a bit like, I guess, the Aldi of today. And they had their no frills range. And it was very cheap, but you could buy like chicken and stuff really cheaply. So I literally became one of those people that ate the same thing all the time. So between eating like grilled chicken and then my shakes, this was kind of my thing. And obviously a couple of snake bite and blacks in between being up at university. So I kind of got the bug there, ended up getting friendly with another guy who became my training partner. And then when we left university, again, by some fluke, I managed to get a place at law school. And my dad was very excited by this. He'd been in retail, he'd been a pharmacy retailer, and he didn't want me to go into that. He wanted me to become a professional and have a career and an obvious path ahead of me. So obviously being a good son, I kind of followed that to a point. And then one day, in between that, this friend of mine knew another guy who had a supplement business. He said, look, stop making all this stuff yourself. Just buy my friend's stuff. So I was like, okay, I'll buy it. And I've been using it for a while, and I've been using quite a few products that this company had. And my goal, Gladiators, came on TV. And I wanted to become a contender. So I took my training up to the next level. For many reasons, I didn't make it. However, we ended up supplying the show. And in fact, one of my longest standing customers was Doom. So hi, Wayne, if you're listening. But I never made it onto the show. Anyway, we went to the gym, went to Hendon Youth Centre, for anybody that knows it, which is, again, quite spit and sawdust. And me and this friend of mine, Mark, were doing a bench press, and this other guy who owned this other company was doing a lat pull down. So I finished my set, went over to talk to him and said, look, I've not been using your product for a while. I'm training really hard. It's not working. I went, fuck off. I'm doing a lat pull down. You're interfering in my set. So a little switch in my head went, fuck you. I'm starting a sports nutrition company. And then the world came crashing in. And I decided to not go to law school, which basically got me booted out of the house. I qualified as a SAQ coach, a nutritionist, and a PT. And basically, I just thought a lot of the brands at that time, there were much fewer brands. Mm-hmm. So most of them were started, very unlike now, where I say a lot of brands have been started by somebody looking at a market and going, oh, look at the size of that market. If I get X% of that, I'm going to have a multi-billion-dollar brand. I think the way it was then, whether it was Weider or other players at the time, it was people that were probably bodybuilding background who had a passion for what they were doing and wanted to make products. And making money was definitely a goal, but it wasn't like, it was secondary probably for a lot of them, and certainly it was for me. And what happened was I was looking around, and then you had the move from the spit and sawdust gym to the more kind of mainstream, and a lot more women were coming into the market, even back in the late 90s. And I just thought, a lot of the brands there, like Weider, Chemical Warfare, Maxi Muscle, were all very bodybuilding, male focused, and disenfranchised me as I was before I started training. I thought most people are probably more like me than they are like a bodybuilder. I thought if I can come up with a product that's going to help people improve their performance, but also help with a bit of weight loss, and it's science-based, this is really going to revolutionize the market. So the big thing back then, and weirdly even bigger now, or back on the agenda now, was creatine. So what was going on with creatine? There was some amazing research about that. Richard Creeder, Paul Greenhalgh, Professor Eukendrup, they were all doing this amazing research. And I came across a paper by a guy called Ron Morn, which was a BOA position statement on creatine, talking about loading and maintenance and so on. And this was obviously pre-internet. This was actually even pre-Amazon, I believe. So I had to go to the British Library, do research, fax people, ring them up, get more information. And I was completely convinced that creatine was going to be one of the key products that I was going to launch. So I looked at the market, and everybody was doing it in a powder. And powders are great, and we do a creatine powder. But the problem with it, particularly if you're talking about loading, was about getting accuracy of dosage. It's about convenience, and also about tamper evidence. There was a lot of publicity back in the late and early 90s about positive drug tests with sports nutrition. So I thought, look, if it goes in a different format that is more tamper evident, you can prevent that from happening. So as I said, my dad was a retail pharmacist, so from a very young age I used to clean the shelves and so on. And I sought my dad's advice, begged him after packing in law school. I said, why are most medicines in a capsule? And he goes, well, it's accuracy, convenience, and the tamper evidence. So I thought, okay, that kind of makes sense. So what I thought to myself was, let's do a creatine in a capsule. Let's do it in 2 phases, because the evidence suggested a loading and a maintenance. So we have a phase 1 for loading and a phase 2 for maintenance. And then I thought, how can I make the maintenance phase better? So again, went back to the books and discovered this ingredient called chitosan, which is a natural fiber, which helps reduce the amount of fat you store from your diet. So I thought, hang on, if I can help people perform better and help them reduce a bit of fat from their diet, they're going to love this. So I then found a contract manufacturer. I said, could you produce this for me? And I got them to deliver some to my parents' house. And I labelled it up, and a guy I knew from university, his first job was helping to improve the performance in the recruits of elite special forces in the UK for the MOD. So I said, look, if I send you some of this product, can you do some testing on it for me? Look at their VO2 max, blah, blah, blah. So he agreed. So he did that, and he wrote me a lovely report and faxed it to me. And I think I've got a copy of it somewhere in the Biosynergy archives. And I was like really confident with this. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go ahead. Got a label designed. Again, somebody I knew at the gym who's still a customer, weirdly. And now his son's a customer. So it's like second generation. Helped come up with the original logo. And I nearly called the company Chameleon because I liked the idea of a little character, and it was going to be Chameleon Make the Change. And in the end, I went with Biosynergy because it meant working with life. And the idea was that wherever life stage you're at, whatever your goal, will have the right product to fit your needs. So I went with that, and then again got the contract manufacturer to deliver some more product, labelled it on my parents' dining room table, converted the loft into like an office, and basically used to get a Yellow Pages and an A to Z and plan where I was going to drive my Escort 1.4L. So I'd pack the car with product, and the idea was to drive out in the morning, come back in the afternoon with no product. And then in the interim, I also set up probably the first e-commerce website. Well, I don't think you'd even call it e-commerce. First semi-transactional website in the sports nutrition space, but it was on dial-up, and you didn't have any secure payment. So what would happen was people would go onto the website, which probably took an hour to load, place an order. I'd then have to ring them back and say, can I get your credit card details? And either put them through on a card machine, if anybody can remember those old, when you actually write it down and you go like that and take it to the bank, or I had a PDQ machine, which I used to type in the credit card details there and then. And then when we sent the order out, I'd put the slip in, and then I'd go to my local postmaster, Ashwin, at 3:00 in the afternoon with hopefully a big grey bag, and then start the whole process again. So this carried on for a bit. And then I got a couple of lucky breaks. One was I went to Selfridges, and I went into the pharmacy there, and I got chatting to the pharmacist. I said, look, I've got this great new product. And basically I pitched him. I kept going back with more pitching. And eventually this guy just gave in and let me put the stuff on the shelf at Selfridges. And weirdly, he rang me up like a week or two later. It's sold. And I was like, fuck, this is great. And I didn't actually think it was going to sell in Selfridges. And then on the back of that, I then went to Lily White's, John Bell and Croyd, and I went to the premium end kind of retail. So I thought, this is where I want to position myself. I want to be in these kind of sports and pharmacy and so on. But I was also going to like Titans gym out in Luton. I think it was called Titans, and like dealing with like the bodybuilding fraternity. So it was like really aiming for the mass. And then I got a call one day back in the office. Hi, this is Gary. I'm in Highbury. Do you deliver? And I was like, yeah, I sure do, Gary. Whereabouts are you? I'm in the stadium. Okay, Gary. Which stadium is that? He goes, Highbury Stadium. I said, okay. I said, where exactly is that? So because of my lack of interest in any sport, I had no idea that this was anything to do with a football club, let alone Arsenal. Anyway, we got to the bottom of the conversation, and I went there the next day, and I had 25 packs, and I thought, well, look, if nothing happens, at least I've got enough to go round flogging it afterwards. And to cut a long story short, Gary said, I'll take the lot. I was like, this is amazing. I've just sold like £1,000's worth of stuff. Go upstairs and she'll give you a check. I thought, hang on, I've sold it and I've got paid. This is like the best day ever. I don't even have to do any work now because I've got no stock. So I went home, and then like back to the normal thing. Then I think that Sunday, there used to be a newspaper called the Sunday Sport, which I don't think's around anymore. And on the back cover, it said, Arsenal Gunners pop growth pills pre-season. It was a massive picture of Ian Wright. And then somewhere in the background must have been my product, because all I know is my fax machine blew up.
Wow.
So I'm getting faxes from all these different football clubs, rugby league clubs, you name it. So all of a sudden, this guy that knows nothing about sport, let alone how many people play on a team, I'm driving up north now. I'm going to like Leeds Rhinos. I'm going to Warrington Wolves. I'm going to cricket clubs, Jaguar F1. Williams F1, I think, at the time. Then it became Renault. And then by the end of probably the late 90s, I was the official supplier to the whole of Premier Rugby, Rugby Super League, most of professional football teams, most of F1, the whole of county cricket, and some other British Basketball League and the Ice Hockey Super League. So I was going to all these events, like, how many people on a team? How do you score? Not a clue. And then I gave them so my other thing was I was never ever going to pay anybody to recommend the product. So another call I got, which was kind of transformational, got a call, hi, I'm a swimmer, blah, blah, blah. And it turned out it was Mark Foster. And he was going for a world record and he wanted some creatine. So I went along and to Coptal. I think he actually got the world record. And he's, again, still a customer today, 28 years on. And he's still in ridiculous shape. So all of a sudden, I'm now supplying all of these teams. And actually, Mark became my first brand ambassador, and then Will Greenwood, who played for British and Irish Lions. And again, never paid them, never gave them free product, gave them discounted product. But then what the clubs used to do is put my brand on their clothing or around the stadium in retrospect of the discount I was giving them. But obviously there was no social media at the time, so it was really hard to communicate that. So you had a lot of magazines come out like Men's Health, GQ Active, so I started advertising in those. And my first advert was in Men's Health. It just said, be yourself, be your best, be Biosynergy. Be sure to watch this space if you want to burn fat and put on muscle, and call and visit the website. And again, people started ringing and so on. And that became my kind of direct-to-consumer thing. And then I realised that I was gaining a bit of momentum. And I started ringing up big retail. And again, I wore this poor woman down at Tesco, who agreed to meet me. And she goes, look, I like what you're doing. I absolutely hate the branding. You go away, come back with different branding and a bigger range, because I only had quite a small range, and I'll think about it. I was like, this woman's like, she's so nice. And I was wearing a suit. So again, I used to go to meetings in suits then. So I still looked pretty young. I was like 23 at the time, probably. Wow. And I was like, oh, and you sit there like sweating, waiting to see her in this big corporate office. And it was very anyway, so we went away and did it. And in the meantime, a lady called Louise Martin, who was the head of, I think, the SPL, she became the chief nutritionist for the Commonwealth Games in Manchester that was going to happen in 2002. And she said, oh, we're looking for sports nutrition for all the home nations. Would you give us a good discount? And could you develop a product for us? I was like, sure, no problem. What product are you looking for? We need an isotonic energy drink, but we need it with a sports cap, which nobody did, weirdly. And we don't want any artificial ingredients in it. So we developed it, we called it Liquid Energy, and it ended up, I went back to Tesco and said, look, we developed a sports energy drink, and we'd also developed a protein bar called Perfect Balance, which at the time had 20 grams of protein in it. It was sugar-free. It was a great product. And then she agreed to launch the full range, which I think was about 20 products back then, in about 350 stores.
Wow.
And this was game-changing stuff. And then on the back of that, we ended up supplying a lot of the other big retailers as well. And then it all came crashing down a couple of years later because the buyer changed. And this guy rang me up. I do know his name, but I won't say it. Anyway,
you know who you are.
Yeah. He said, we're doing a range review. Really interested in how well you've done. Could you write a business plan of how you would grow the category? So I thought, this is a great opportunity. I'll be completely honest. I said, so I wrote him a plan. In the plan, I said, look, Biosynergy do this, bring in this brand to do that, bring in that brand to do that. And then you've got a really nice offering for like best, good, better, best, something for bodybuilders, something not, so on and so forth. He said, oh, brilliant business plan. He goes, I've noticed though, you never paid a listing fee. I was like, listing fee? What's a listing fee? He goes, well, based on your sales, I think you should have paid about £150,000. I was like, I haven't got £150,000. He goes, I said, what about if I do this? I came up with a number of different options, which didn't involve me trying to find £150,000. And then he just disappeared on me. The next thing I know, I get an email. We've decided not to continue with your brand. I'm sitting there. At this time, we've moved from keeping everything in my parents' garage and the loft to warehousing, and I've had to build up a lot of stock to feed the Tesco machine. And all of a sudden, I've got no Tesco. So this was a massive problem for me. And then basically another sad story. So jumping forward a couple of years, I was trying to do some investment. And somehow I was actually at a charity dinner, and I was sitting next to Lawrence Dallaglio, who, again, still a customer. And he's massive. I mean, the guy's a beast in the nicest possible way. And we're chatting away, and then Seb Coe's sitting on the same table with us. It was a variety club dinner. And I said to Lawrence, "Oh, look, I've had this problem. I really need to get some investment." He goes, "Oh, you should talk to Seb." I was like, "Okay." I said, "I don't know him." He goes, "Don't worry, I'll introduce you." So he introduces me to him. And then I ended up getting a meeting with Seb up at the LOCOG offices. So I go up there, I said to him, "Look, this is what I'm doing. These are my customers. I've had this problem." And he goes, "Oh, look, I'd be interested in investing, but I'd have to be chairman." And I'm like, okay. So I ended up agreed. And the idea was that he was going to put an amount of money in, which he did. And that hopefully then on the back of that, having him as chairman and then having that small amount of money, which would basically give me that breathing space for what Tesco created, would allow me to then go and get more investments. This was about 2000. It was in 2005. So I'd been in business nearly 10 years at this stage. And we'd done a lot of other strange things. Like we'd done licensing. So I used to do Marvel products. I used to do Superman products, Bart Simpson products.
Wow.
And so on. And basically, I then managed to get in contact with a company called Aberdeen Asset Management, who are like a VC. I said, "Look, we love what you're doing. We can see this is I said, by that time, the internet had happened. Sports nutrition was becoming slightly more mainstream, but it wasn't like it is now, obviously. We're happy to invest £10 million.
Wow.
Right. This is like insane. So I've gone from like being absolutely screwed to now I'm in this position where I could get £10 million worth of investment.
Yeah.
Which would probably I would have been enormous by now. Obviously, it didn't happen. But what happened was there was so PR is a funny thing. It can be great, but it can also be devastating. So in this case, it was devastating. So there was again the newspaper. So in the opposite way to the Arsenal thing, I get a phone call on Sunday from Seb's people. Seb's got to resign. He can't be chairman of the business anymore. I said, why? Daily Mail have just printed an article saying Seb Coe gets top job at company selling banned sports supplements. We're bidding for the 2012 games at the moment. We cannot have anything tarnishing his reputation. Rushed out, bought the newspaper, and then the article says, in some countries, some sports supplements have been associated with sports people getting banned. Nothing about biosynergy, nothing about the product, nothing really about Seb other than this sensational headline. So we were supposed to be signing on Monday for this investment.
Right.
Monday morning, Seb's faxed me over the weekend, resignation, I can't be chairman. Ring them up Monday morning. I said, look, Seb's still a shareholder, but he's had to resign because of this thing. We really, really wanted Seb to be chairman of that company.
Ouch.
Thanks a lot. Goodbye.
Oh my goodness. That's crazy. There's so much there actually that I want to unpack, because if we go back, like, you were really young when you started this, right? You're just fresh out of uni. You're doing it from uni, and you had huge success at a young age. When you were going through that, and you know the Arsenal part, and people just like purchasing your product, were you kind of like ever questioning yourself, or were you just rolling it? I mean, what was your sort of state of mind when you were managing that?
The good thing was, and I met a lot of very famous people, and we ended up actually making a range specifically for David Coulthard at the time when he was like the Lewis Hamilton of now.
Yeah.
And because I had no I knew of the names, but I didn't know who they were. So it kind of worked in my favor. So when I was meeting these people that for a lot of people would have been like amazing, I just saw it as almost very transactional. So it wasn't like any kind of like, unlike when I went to Tesco, I was like shivering with nerves. When I was meeting these people, it was very much like, it's just a bloke. A lot of them are only probably 3 or 4 years older than me at the time, maybe 5. So they were kind of peers, and I didn't really feel intimidated by them. And I just thought, I've made a great product. And that's, for me, it's always been about the product. So some of the product we've done a lot of innovation over the last 28 years, 29 years. And arguably some of the products that are now staples in sports nutrition, either we pioneered or we created. So I'd probably say we were the first company to do a sports energy drink with a sports cap, which just sounds ridiculous, but we were. We were the first people to put creatine into a capsule. We were the first people to do, I think, probably a whey isolate product, or GABA, which is no longer available now. But it was always, to me, about what would I take and how could I improve? So I was like the guinea pig. And it didn't surprise me when sports people bought it. It surprised me a little bit when I was putting it into retail.
Yeah.
And people were buying it, and I was thinking, wow. I mean, for me, it was and it still is, the buzz for me is thinking somebody has worked really hard to earn whatever money they've got. They're looking to improve, and they've chosen my product to help make that happen. And that is my motivation. And that's what keeps me excited. So through all the pitfalls, so if you look at, say, COVID, I lost 99% of my business in 24 hours.
Wow. So
we were supplying, again, although we were pioneered, in fact, I was in fact the third biggest internet service provider in 1999. So it was Dixon's, AOL, Dixon's, me. Wow. We were sending out CD-ROMs because I knew the future would be people would be buying online.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to get online with Biosynergy. And we were sending out the CD-ROM discs for people to connect. So, but the problem was there was no PayPal, no Google. People were using Alta Vista and AOL. So there was no way of really monetizing the web as there is now. And so although I've always had a website, my business had always been very much B2B and also export. So when COVID happened, we were doing about 10 million drinks a year through one retailer. That retailer shut in one day. So I went from doing like nearly 1 million bottles a month to 0 with the same overhead. I went from supplying China, Europe, Vietnam, the US with product to 0 overnight.
Wow.
All the gyms shut. It was carnage. And a lot of people said, why are you even bothering? Like, you've gone from a decent business to literally no business in 24 hours. You've been doing it for 20 odd years. Why don't you just pack it in now? So I figured out how much money I had like squirreled away. And I said, look, I'll just put everything that I've got and just keep trying to dig my way out of it.
Yeah. How do you manage that, right? Because all of a sudden you've got this product, and I love that the fact is your passion and your motivation is actually the results, because some people can be like, it's all about the money, but actually you want people to buy your product and benefit from it, right? And that keeps you going. Your business is all of a sudden doing really well, and the fact that you didn't know all the famous people is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
But then your business is booming. How do you kind of keep grounded with that? And then there's this other part of the lows, which we'll probably dive into a bit more, but how you then manage that from a mental perspective.
I guess I'm a bit weird, and maybe it helps in that as soon as I've achieved something, I forget about it.
Yeah.
So to me, the fact that I've achieved one thing, I've now got to get on to the next thing. So I don't really pause to think, oh, pat on the back time. Which is probably a bad thing, because I mean, I've spoken to people over the years, said you should celebrate all your wins and things like that. And I just don't. As far as I'm concerned, that is my job. My job is to make great product, get as many people, hopefully benefiting from it as possible. and then move on to the next thing. So I guess that, and also the people around me. So I'm very, I think, again, what's weird, I read something that your best customers are probably people you don't know. And I think that people that I do know, like, often irritates me. They'll buy other people's products. And I don't know if they're doing it to spite me or to wind me up, or if it's just like a weird, I don't want you to succeed thing. I don't know if at the back of some people's minds, they kind of are not cheering for you. Whereas I had, like, again, a guy called Luke rang me up yesterday. He's been a customer for over 20 odd years. He rang me up on, I go for a dog walk every lunchtime with my dogs. And we chatted for like half an hour, and he's saying how his training's changed and what products he's using now and what his wife should be using. And now his daughter's getting a bit older. What would I recommend? And that, for me, is like the massive motivation. So I've got people who were buying my product 20, nearly 30 years ago who are now, their kids are using it. In fact, another guy, Mark, he rang up and said, oh, my son's just qualified to play internationally in hockey. He's been using your product as well. He's been nicking it from me. We now need to start buying his own. I'm like, this is amazing. I've got dads and sons and daughters who are benefiting. And that's the thing. And the same with my own children. So like my kids now use the products. And that, I guess, it just, I don't think I've achieved anything.
That's really interesting. And the part also that your customers' names there, people are calling you up. Yeah. So you've obviously got that direct relationship. You come across very humble as well. Like, what you've achieved is fantastic, and congratulations. I mean, at that age, to be supplying Arsenal and being out in the press in those days is crazy. It's phenomenal. I think that part that you mentioned about the self-reflection, I think, is an interesting thing, right? Because because your goal isn't to go, oh, look at me. It's not an ego thing, right?
No, not at all.
It's the fact that you're there to help others. But then you come to this point, like you mentioned COVID, like just having something and it's all going in a positive way, and then it just drops. I mean, does that not impact you, like from a mental health perspective?
Yeah, it did a little bit, but then I thought, you know what? One of two things is going to happen. I'm either going to dig myself out of this shit, or I'm going to have to become, go and work in a shop, and I'll do whatever is necessary to put food on the table. Right? I'm not bothered. I've put 110% into this. Something's happened that I've got no control over. I can either just call it a day, or I can just put my head down, try and minimize the fallout. And I believe in myself, so I'm going to back myself and put all the money that I've put away back into this, and hopefully it'll be enough to sustain me to when this finishes. And every month I was thinking, I can't go on another month, can't go on another, and it just kept going on and on and on. And I think you just got to believe in yourself at that. I mean, that's where you've just got to say, like, I believe in my mission. I believe what I'm doing is right. And I'll hopefully, no, I'm not back to where I was yet, but I think I'm back in the right direction now. But I'm also very fortunate. Although it is work, I don't feel like it's work a lot.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing I'd rather be doing other than maybe spending time with my kids, but they're so old now, they probably don't want to be seen with me. So it's like, who am I going to spend my time with? Everybody else is at work anyway.
Yeah.
I might as well do what I enjoy. And then when you get a little thing like Luke or Mark or somebody ringing up, that really, for me, disproportionately motivates me.
That's incredible. And I love that. The fact that you say about self-belief, because I think that all comes down to everything, right? You've spoken about in terms of the passion, the self-belief. That will drive you even through those darker times, right? Because sometimes that can really, really unbalance people. But you seem pretty grounded in terms of
dogs.
Therapeutic.
Stroking two dogs simultaneously
during COVID. Yeah.
And going to the gym.
Going to the gym is another one. Does that help you?
100%. I mean, I'm like, I've got a full rotator cuff tear. And I did it like 3 years ago, and I keep putting off the surgery because it means I can't go to the gym for 6 months. I'm just thinking, what is going to happen, both physically and mentally, to me, if I can't go to the gym? I'm probably going to have to actually bite the bullet and take the 6 months and just do it soon. But yeah, for me, and I say this to my kids as well, the gym, if you know, it depends what your goals are. For me, it's about not being the worst looking, oldest looking person in my generation. Being able to keep up with my kids is my kind of physical motivation. But then from a mental point of view, it's my outlet. So I'm one of these weird people. I don't take my phone to the gym. I don't listen to music. I just literally get into my training and I focus on that. And it's like an hour and a half, 4 or 5 times a week, where it's just completely, I'm not thinking, I take my brain out and just leave it at the gym door.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, I can relate to that, because that's my outlet is if I don't tune in, don't have fitness, usually it's because I've got a recovery day and I'm like getting the shakes and it's like, what's wrong? You're not a nice person to be around.
Too much pre-workout. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe that as well. And then we talked earlier on, I love what you were talking about and mentioning a few things, like I was getting a bit nostalgic, Yellow Pages and how things were in those days in terms of driving your business forward. Yeah. We hit COVID and you say that your business is recovering, but we're now going through this social media phase, or it's going to stick, right?
Yeah. Well, for the time being.
For the time being, until the next thing comes along. So how are you navigating all of that?
That's really interesting. So back to Amazon. So bizarrely, I think back in 2008, when Facebook was new, I had 8,000 followers. That was huge. This was like, we were the most followed sports nutrition brand in the world with 8,000 followers. Wow. And I had a meeting out in Seattle at Amazon because we were going to launch out there. And I remember they didn't want to talk about the product. They wanted to know, how did I get these 8,000 followers? This was the whole meeting.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, they're just customers that like our stuff.
Yeah.
And I think what's happened is, and we're very early adopters. So if you look at our social media, we haven't got the biggest followings or even the most engagement now. But if you look back, we're probably one of the first, if not the first, to adopt a new trend. I think what's interesting now, and I feel like it's a benefit and a curse. So the benefit is you can share your message very quickly, instantaneously with somebody. The curse of it is that people are sharing information which is disingenuous and misleading. Mm-hmm. And unless you're really, really educated and you really take the time to dig into what it is you're looking at, the likelihood is that you're being given misinformation. So that goes a little bit back to why we've never paid anybody to endorse our brand. The only thing we do is we give any free product we give out is to charities, and that could range from like a donkey charity to cancer research. I don't really care if anybody charity wise is listening. Send me an email. You're going to get free stuff. Is that as soon as you start paying somebody, particularly in the nutrition space, it's not such a big problem in apparel and other things. It's a product that is going into your body. And you really need to think, should I be taking that? What is the benefit for me, if any? And is this product actually any good? And who's making it? So, and that doesn't go through most people's minds. They see a good looking person, somebody with abs or somebody with some kind of qualification saying this is the best thing since sliced bread. And they must be using it. What they don't realize is in many cases, the abs or whatever they're seeing may not even be real. They could be photoshopped. Assuming they are real, they've probably been working to get them for years, maybe even decades. And they're probably using a lot of things that they aren't currently advertising, nor would they be able to. The other thing is that they're often getting paid. And you'll often see through like influencers thing, 1 week they're promoting product X, then Y, then Z. So it's all about who's paying them the most. So I think that's really disingenuous. And there's a brand, I won't mention them, not because I can't, because I can. There's no slander or anything, but I won't because I'm not that kind of guy. But they're a very big brand. For 6 years, they were understating by over 20% what was in their product. So if they were saying it was 80% protein, it was 60. They ended up, over a 6-year period, they were spoken to by trading standards and so on, and they just ignored it. Finally, they got fined £100,000. Over that period of time, they probably sold over 1 million tubs of protein. So work out how much extra money they made. But in addition to that, they had a very, very high profile ambassador in athlete promoting their brand. He knew, as a result of the publication of this study, of them getting fined. So it was in the newspapers that they got fined. So there's no way this athlete or his team did not know that for the last 6 years he'd been promoting this brand and taking a very big check, and he continues to do so. So it just makes you wonder what else is happening. So I think the whole phrase that they use in is, buyer beware. I think you really need to dig into particularly anything you're putting on your body, because it's really important that A, it is what it is, and B, that it's an authentic play that's being made. So again, sometimes you feel with social media, you're shouting into a void, because unless you, again, back in the early days of social media, it was all about genuine, authentic relationships between you and your customer.
Yeah.
Now I could post something. We've got, let's say, 100,000 people following us on something, and only 1 or 2 of our followers will even see that, unless I'm paying for them to see that. So you've built up a community, you've invested time and effort creating content, and then the people who've followed you because it's you are not even seeing the stuff that they wanted, because you're not prepared to pay somebody else to push it. So I think it's really interesting, and I think that people are beginning to realize to take things with a pinch of salt, but I think there's still a big education gap there.
It's interesting, like you mentioned, you've been the pioneer of everything from the start, right? And then if we look at the sports supplement market now, I mean, if we use Amazon as an example, it's saturated, and you go and look for, let's say, some creatine. Half the time you don't know where to start, because there's so many brands, and like you say, who do you trust? You go for these reviews, but how much do you trust those reviews?
Yeah.
How does that make you feel when knowing in your mind you were the pioneer?
I think
and
I get
all
a
of
bit
these?
of, wow, this is so cool.
Yeah.
But another bit of frustration. So particularly if somebody who's just, let's say, started a company last week says, oh, this, and this, and I've done it. And I'm like, you really didn't do that. So there's a bit of frustration. And I'll be honest with you, particularly when I see products that are inferior and then people are like beating a path to buy it. I'm like, why? What's going on in the world that, that people are just being smoke and mirrored into buying stuff? So I think there was somebody who used to advise me, said there was a saying in the Victorian times, if you built a mousetrap and then you built a better mousetrap, everybody would buy the better mousetrap. Now nobody cares about whether or not it's better. They just want to know, have they heard about it? So people are buying the marketing rather than the product. And I think, marketing is important, but I think the product really is the absolute most important thing that you should buy. And then I've got a belief that, we've all got limited time and limited money as well. So what you want to do is get the most out of your time and the best value for your money. So I've got like a saying, 1 scoop of quality is worth 2 of cheap. So I would rather, for me, going to the gym, I've got a certain amount of time I can spend there. And most people, unless you're an athlete, you can only devote a certain number of hours in the day to the gym. So what you want to do is get the most out of it. To get the most out of, and so therefore you're dedicating the most valuable thing that you have, your time, into the gym. So if you can get half an hour back a week that you can spend knitting, playing with your kids, going for a walk with your dog, that is a massive gift. So if the product that you're taking can help give you back that half hour, because it's going to allow you to recover faster, rest less between sets, blah, 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 that's a good value proposition to me. Whereas if you're buying something that's not going to give you that, then all you're doing is wasting your money and your time.
Yeah. And does that, because I guess that's quite could get frustrating, right? When you're looking at the competition, you're seeing someone doing really well purely out of marketing and it being disingenuous, like you say about people look at that body and think they've got that body, where it could be completely genetic and there are other reasons for it. Do you just How do you just stay in your lane? Because
I try not to get, I mean, it does frustrate me. I'd
yeah,
be like stupid to say that it doesn't. But I think at the end of the day, I've just got to focus on what I can do
yeah,
within the confines of what I've got. I'm not a VC backed company, we're a private company. I've got poor Sebco as a shareholder still. That, you know, I can't go and, no, a lot of brands now, what they'll do is they'll go, here's the size of the market. This is the market I'm targeting. That's worth 1 billion. Give me 10 million. I'll get 100 million of it. And they'll spend 9 million doing customer acquisition before they make a profit. And then all of a sudden they're profitable and then everybody knows about them. I'm doing it the other way. I've got no money. So every single pound that I spend, first of all, it has to be on product first, because I won't sell a product unless I would give it to my kids. And then if I've got any money left over that, then we can put it into marketing. And it's a very slow process to do it like that. So again, we're very lucky. We get a lot of PR. We have some amazing customers. We win a lot of awards and so on. And we do marketing, but we're certainly not at the level that some of these other brands are at.
And you're a really credible brand, right? And as you say, exactly what's going into your product. And that's something that's really important and frustratingly isn't always the case when customers are buying products these days. You had that moment where all of a sudden you could have worked with venture capitalists investing in more money. And you gave an example there with some of the companies. Have you ever wanted to go back down that route, or have you always wanted to stay sort of where you're at?
I think it's about, like anything, you've got to find the right partner. And it's about, anybody listening wants to throw money at me and help me with my marketing, yeah, I'm here, just make it happen. But I think I'm not chasing that. I think, to me, I know where my business or the brand could be. I know the quality of the product. I know the opportunities. And sometimes you just got to wait. You've got to be patient. And then that's really, really difficult. I'm not a patient person. And that's probably why I don't get excited when things do happen, because I'm like thinking, why didn't that happen already?
Should have happened yesterday.
Or 10 years ago or whatever. So I'm definitely open to it, but I think it's about finding, we have had a couple of conversations over the years, but it's about timing and the right people and having the right vision. And I think unless somebody, whether it's even somebody you work with, whether it's an agency, an employee or whatever, I think you've got to have a shared vision. You might not always get on with each other. And there's always good to have a bit of, backwards and forwards. But I think ultimately you need to believe in the same thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's not gonna work it's not gonna be sustainable.
And I think, and that's what's coming across is with your passion is also that values part, right? Being really ethical with your business, which these days is very hard in the industry that you're in, with social media that we've spoken about. And so we're coming up to time, and your story is fascinating in terms of your growth journey
and collapse journey
but you'll and that recovery part as well. But if you were to go back, and we didn't really touch on it in terms of what that transformational period from you from school of then going into the gym and changing that, and that being a drive for you. If you were to speak to that young Daniel then and give him some advice, because you've gone to the future and you've gone back to the past, what would that be?
I think it's very hard being a solo founder, because I'm not good at everything. Some would say I'm not good at anything. So I think it's really, if you look at, I say, successful businesses generally that start small and grow, either they're family businesses where you've got similar age group but different skill sets, or you've got founders. I think Innocent was a good example, where I think they had like a marketing guy, they had a sales guy and a finance guy. And it's I'd be surprised if there's anybody that can do all three of those things at an exceptional level. So I'd say if you're thinking about starting a business, probably find two friends who do stuff that you can't do, but share your passion and values and idea and want to be with you on a journey. And then also it helps, like sometimes, like, who do I go and talk to for advice? Like, who do I brainstorm with? Luckily, I ask my kids now. I find they're a good influence. And also I've got a network of people that I work with on other things who I ask for advice. But I think that would be one thing. The other thing is, particularly if you're starting now, I say realistically, as much as it hurts me to say it, I think you probably do want to go out and raise investment at the beginning of your journey, because the likelihood is it does come down to marketing, and you can have the best product in the world, but if nobody knows about it, it's still the best product in the world, but nobody knows about it. Mm-hmm. So I think, it depends. I'm not saying for some people you can get lucky. Now, I had a bit of luck on my way. I've had a bit of bad luck on my way, but you could, I think, Dubai chocolate. I mean, I don't know what the hell's going on with that, but that was something that all of a sudden it's probably turned into a multi-billion pound business off the back of some social media activity. So you can get lucky, but you can't bank on luck. So I think you've got to be, I think the key thing I'd go back and say is get a team together from day one.
Yeah, definitely. And as a solo founder as well, I can absolutely relate to that, because it can get lonely at times, right?
Yeah.
And as you say, who do you talk to? Who do you use as a sounding board? And so I think that's great advice for your younger self. Would you tell your younger self to do it again, or would you? Yep.
I'd just do a couple of things differently, but on the whole, I've, like I said, I get up every morning and I'm excited to go to work. On the weekend, I feel a bit sad that I'm not going in. So, and unfortunately, because of social media and email, I'm now probably spend too much time on that when I shouldn't be doing work stuff. But and again, I think I've got a good work-life balance. Mm-hmm. To be honest, I think I'm quite lucky. I don't believe in working like 18-hour days and stuff like that. If you need to do it once or twice because something, or you need to fly to others. I travel a lot we've got international customers. So if I've got to go on a plane and see somebody, that's great. But I don't want to spend my life doing that.
Yeah.
It's about, there's no point traveling somewhere for the sake of traveling. You either want to go to achieve a goal or to sit on a beach.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the fact that so as we said, sort of, I was doing my calculations, like 2025, 28 years, I would say you've been in business for. And the fact that you still wake up excited, I think is a testament to the fact that you seem to have been somebody that stayed in their lane, know what motivates you, know what kind of lights you up. And even if you've hit those dark times, right, with COVID or things where you think the capitalists are going to invest in you, you've still stayed grounded. So I think hats off to you, because I think that's a real testament for anyone listening and hitting those times where it gets tough, that just remember why you're on that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. You've been an absolutely awesome guest. It's great to catch up. We still haven't worked out when you started at Amazon, but I reckon it's over 15 years
must
ago.
Be.
So
yeah. You've done well as well.
Yeah, so, well, I've shared my story as well. So thank you once again.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for listening today. Love this episode? Don't miss out. Hit subscribe on our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Instagram as we continue to keep it real.